Stop. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Soccerwise. David Goss and Tom Bogert here with you all to award 3 more trophies on this Thursday. Tom, we play soccer for 12 months in North America for the most part. We give away like 10 trophies, and we did 3 of them on the same night. You know, why not just load everything up? Do you feel victorious on this Thursday?
I feel gross because I ate an extra large pizza by myself because I talked myself into it. It's like, oh, I'm looking forward to the Open Cup. Obviously, it's like, wait a minute, Campiones Cup. All right, that could be fun. Let's see the lineups. Oh, the lineups came out full strength for both teams and Canadian Championship tonight, dude. It's Championship Wednesday. I'm gonna go get pizza. And then I was curled up in the fetal position by 11 p.m. because surprisingly my stomach was hurting from having going back to the pizza box yet again.
You ate the full pizza?
I did.
No, you didn't.
I did. Multiple sittings though, so like, I think I got home with it at 7.
So it's 4 different meals. It's basically it was across a day, not across a sitting.
Across 3 hours. I think that's closer to 1 sitting than to 2.
Oh, Tom, that is a lot for me to intake right now.
Yeah, and even then I woke up this morning, I was like, why do you feel so heavy and gross and tired? And it's like, I don't know. I'm probably just really unlucky, or it's the fact that I had all of that pizza and milk. I love milk. And then maybe
pizza
it's that
and milk.
I love milk, dude. I had to stop buying milk. So like, when I was buying groceries for the first time in college, like, I would go through a gallon a week. It got to the point where I was like, I cannot buy milk or I will drink a gallon a week, and I do not need any more margins of putting that much fat in my body because I do plenty of fat in my body. For instance, an extra large pizza by myself on a Wednesday night.
Is this a coffee situation or is this straight glasses of milk?
What is coffee? What do you mean in coffee?
You use it to put in things, or you just drink the milk
drink
straight?
I drink like a pint of milk.
Oh my god!
Like,
I don't think I've drank a glass of milk in maybe 20 years. And
well, dude, guess who hasn't broken any bones? This guy.
Wow. The strength is over. I can feel the calcium through the computer right now.
They're sweating out of me.
Hey, it's good to know we can finally target a sponsor and we can go for the Dairy Farmers of Soccer America, which is obviously a huge cohort of the pool. So thank you for letting me know. My friend Susan will be very excited when she listens to this because she also loves milk, and I tell her it's disgusting. Like 6 times a week. So you've got a partner in crime, as I believe a hurricane hits me right now, literally in the last 15 seconds. It went from daytime to nighttime and started raining. So unfortunately, my power will go out. I'll lose the fridge and my milk will go bad. So you can drive down here and drink the rest of the milk. And I'm kidding. There's no milk in my fridge. I'm not disgusting like Tom. Let's dig into... I'm like so thrown by this right now that I'm gonna have trouble
on
getting
your back foot.
Yeah, I'm gonna have trouble getting.
Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. You know what I mean? And now you're just like, whoa.
I'm gonna have trouble getting over it. We've obviously got a huge show for you because we did give away 3 trophies yesterday. So we've got LAFC to celebrate. We've got the Vancouver Whitecaps in their Canadian Championship three-peat to celebrate as well, and then we've got Club America, who have won the biggest trophy on the planet. They are Campiones Cup champions, and they are now officially Campeones of Campeón de Campeones. They are the champions. So we'll probably spend about 75 minutes on that game, and we'll sprinkle in 2 or 3 minutes on the other one. And then we got
over now, right?
Yeah, the show will be done. And then we've got a mailbag question. I'm going to do the mailbag episode tomorrow. Tag on with my interview with Haley Carter, the sporting director for the Orlando Pride, which is currently in the longest undefeated streak in NWSL history. They have the 4th longest shutout streak in NWSL history as well. So I dug in with her a whole lot about what they've built and the future of the league. We talked about the new CBA, how it'll affect her job, building clubs, and the future of the sport in this region. So it's going to be a really fun show to put out there on Friday, and we'll start doing this every Friday. So send me any ideas of people you want me to interview, and of course, If you join our Patreon, you get access to our Discord. That's where we hung out yesterday, talked about all the games. We will be in there on Friday and Saturday, Sunday as well, talking about all the games. And that's where I pulled the mailbag from as well. And that's where we got our Vibes 11 question that we will get into later today. But let's start with the U.S. Open Cup. LAFC, their first U.S. Open Cup victory in club history. And that's it, Tom. It's a success. LAFC, you said they couldn't win the big one. You said they couldn't step up. You questioned them, and they have arrived.
This is ridiculously unfair, but go on. That's okay. We don't need context. It's not like that's as if I said any of that. But yeah, big one for
That's
LAFC.
what Steve Trundle texted me after the game. So I'm just saying. He said, "Tell Tom I said suck it." That is not an official quote, by the way.
Thank you for clarifying. LAFC were good, not great, but lifting the trophy, that's all that matters. Olivier Giroud, I thought, looked better within the flow of the game. There were multiple instances where Denny Bouanga got to the end line, cut it back for Giroud. One was a goal, one was a really nice save by Tim Melia. Seeing those moments is super encouraging. But again, most importantly, no matter what happened, they won the trophy, lifted the trophy, added to the trophy cabinet, and LAFC got the job done.
LAFC did get the job done. They end up winning 3-1 in extra time after going ahead 1-0 in the second half of regular time. It felt like a big event, right? It felt like a big moment. There were stars around. The atmosphere was good, as it always is at BMO Stadium. There was, great crowd support. Michael Johnson throwing the eagle in the sky at the beginning of the game.
Throwing the eagle? That's ASPCA's going to be on it.
Maybe, but that's kind of what it looks like. You hold it up and then you throw it and you let that baby rip, and that eagle flies through the sky. And it was
go birds.
And then, as you said, for LAFC, I thought Trundle's comments coming out of halftime were interesting. Of the game's up tempo that suits us. I understand his point. I didn't see a ton of problem solving in their group of using possession to disorganize Sporting Kansas City, but you knew the chance was going to be there. Before we celebrate LAFC, we got to talk about Sporting Kansas City. This was their season in a microcosm. This was their last 2 years packed into one game. There is talent on the field that you trust. There is talent to our debate about Lorenzo Insigne and Gald and quality of soccer player. There are so many players on the field for Sporting Kansas City where if you put a ball down, they can do things that are special that a lot of people on the planet cannot do. It looks good in the middle third. For large segments of the game, they don't score any goals, and they will at some point open themselves up and expose themselves and give you an opportunity in transition. Where that opportunity was offside, we'll discuss in a moment. But that kind of felt like the formula for LAFC was wait for it. And everyone talked about pressure being at home. Yeah, LAFC had a little bit more possession than half in this game, but they let SKC play their game and play themselves into the holes they were going to play themselves into, and they didn't do anything different than what we've seen from LAFC over the last few months.
Yeah. As you said, this was the season for Kansas City, mathematically eliminated from the playoffs. This was a microcosm of kind of what is wrong with the team. You think about the game-winning goal, Omar Campos. That's a left back cutting through several players in the final third, scoring the goal that ends up being the game winner. You think about Alan Pulido was bad, and that's at the root of the squad building issues with this team. Center backs aren't good enough. That's at the root of the issues for squad building of this team. Kyrie Shelton was fine as a converted winger playing right back against Denny Bouanga, who's on $750,000 on the salary cap. This was a microcosm of all the issues that are plaguing this team, and still that little bit of hope that they were okay on the day. Again, the better team won, but again, good, not great on LAFC. It was 1-1 going in stoppage time. Johnny Russell had a 1v1 against Ryan Hollingshead, and he beat him, got a shot off. And how many times in the last 7 years have we seen that hit the back of the net? I wouldn't call it a golden chance, but it was still, they almost did just enough. And things could be much different. But again, they came up short. And this is a big disappointment for Kansas City. Again, this wouldn't have solved all of the issues that I just said, right? They're still going to go into the offseason figuring out the Pulido situation. There's nothing to figure out. This is what it is, right? They will go into the offseason looking at how do we upgrade the defense? How do we upgrade defensive midfield? How do we improve the academy pipeline? None of that would change with the trophy, but it would have felt a whole lot better.
It would have. They've already qualified for CONCACAF, which is big, but it would have. We talked about it on Tuesday. It would give them their 5th ever Open Cup, make them undefeated in Open Cup finals, which is like an amazing stat to have as a club. And this is a club that's built themselves on painting the wall and winning trophies. And like, yeah, it wouldn't have saved their season, but I think it would have really changed the reality of where they stood. You mentioned the goal from Campos to win it. You watch that moment for Sporting Kansas City, and Sporting Kansas City spends $1.5 million a year on Nemanja Radoja and $900,000 a year on Remy Walter. And Zoran Basang is on the edge of the box as the defensive midfielder, and he lets Campos make the run past him because he's scared to make a challenge in the box because he's a left back playing as a defensive midfielder 105 minutes in to a cup final. Like, you are asking these guys to overextend themselves because you have blown it on the middle of the roster build for years now, especially at that defensive midfield position. And that's like the difference of what you get. And LAFC was going to get their chances and create their openings, and they did so. And this is a KC team that there are large segments of games where you're like, wow, this is a good team. This is a fun team to watch. It is never killer moments where they are finishing off teams or they are dominating the game enough to put teams away. And they allow teams back into it. And that's what's, I think, really tough to watch if you're a Sporting Kansas City fan. And I think that's what's really tough when we talked about this game, which was like, I couldn't see Kansas City win it. And then Kansas City went and tied for 90 minutes, right? On the road. Like, they're in the game, and I still couldn't see a way in which they won that game.
So while we're on the disappointment train, once LAFC went up 1-0, this game should have ended 2-0, or it should have been comfortable going down. Like, they shouldn't have gone to extra time. The way that the game ended in extra time, the last 5 or 6 minutes after Kei Kamara, the absolute legend, after Kei Kamara made the game 3-1, that's what it should have felt from the 80th minute to the 90th minute, like a little pre-celebration, right? Like, so there is, like, while this was a bounce back performance by LAFC and something that is obviously very good, should help kind of get them out of their funk. Like, this is why I keep on stressing good, not great from LAFC. And again, like, the chance could have been there for Kansas City, but like, this is what, when we were talking about previewing this game on Tuesday, I just didn't see a scenario in which Kansas City was going to win this game, or like there was a lot of if-ands or if-thens to kind of see that path.
And one of the things for LAFC as we move back to them is I think I said on Tuesday's show, like, with Murillo out, there's no way they go back 5. They're going to play a couple more numbers in midfield. And I was really surprised by that out the gate. I think some of it's understandable. Like, it makes you safe to play. It allows you to get a Hollingshead and, Palencia, who have been good into the attack. It allows the front three to be a little bit versatile and move, but it didn't allow them to dominate possession, I think, and create the overloads that you would like to see a team like LAFC, who was doing this 3 and 4 months ago, dominating the ball and beating teams with possession. You'd like to see them be able to do that against Sporting Kansas City at home. They chose not to. Maybe they can't anymore. Maybe that's the run of games they've been through. Maybe that's the additions they've made have changed the team so much that they're not capable of playing that way. I think that's where you come with the good, not great side is, they were fine in the way they chose to play. The way they chose to play is not overly impressive. I can guarantee LAFC would say, who gives a crap? We won a trophy, and that's their job. And I think that's fair. And that's where it comes down to, though, you can't ask people to say, oh, well, we've almost won trophies. Like, if you're going to play that way, you got to win, because you're not really offering anything else to your fans and to people. And they did. And so they got it done. They get the trophy, their first in club history. It puts them with 1 trophy already this year after losing the Leagues Cup final. It probably sets them up in a way, Tom, in which this season is a success no matter what else happens. Yeah.
Depends on what the playoffs look like, right? Like, if they get kind of bounced in round 2, like, right, like if they get to the conference final or have a really good kind of series or game, then yeah, it is. Look, this is about trophies. LAFC have made no mistake about it. They've said it from the beginning. We're about trophies, man. Like, that's what the culture is at this club. That's what we're striving. It's not good enough if we don't win trophies. So, again, another one to add to the cabinet. And you were right. Like, whatever nonsense we're saying about, hey, I wish that they were more expansive. I wish they controlled the game more. I wish they did this, wish they did that. Doesn't matter. Like winning this way and winning again, if they wanted to drop down to 5 at the back and stay with this, I was really hoping Olivier Giroud's introduction into this team was going to make them go back to 4-3-3 and play more expansive. None of that matters if they win a trophy, man. Like none of it matters.
Yeah. And Giroud was stepped up and was big. We asked the question on Tuesday, like, what do we make of his introduction? He scored the goal. It's not the most complicated goal to score in that moment, but you're looking for people to put that chance away. You're looking for people to make that run. That's what they asked for. He hadn't played in the Open Cup up until this moment, so it's his first Open Cup appearance. He scores the opening goal in the final, and it felt like you could see the emotion for the whole team, and especially for him coming out of it. He's always dreamt of winning a U.S. Open Cup, so he finally had that moment in his career, and I think it'll be big. I think it's one that we'll look back on in 3-4 months and say, like, that was probably it for Giroud, where a lot of it clicked, because I think he's just needed that simple one to get started, and it was the formula we all thought it would be, right? It's Bogusz and Bouanga stretching the field wide, being able to take their players 1v1, and then after that, Giroud's going to win his battle in the box, and that's what we saw.
Exactly. Yeah, you said it perfectly. Again, like Bouanga against Kyrie Shelton. Again, like I'll say it, Kyrie Shelton played fine, played well. Like, he's not the reason that this team didn't win, but like if I'm LAFC, man, like going at that over and over again, I would feel that way for Bouanga versus any fullback in the league, to be fair. But like in this spot, like give me that as many times as possible. I don't like, even if Kyrie was winning tackles, taking the ball off him, that's fine. If it happens 3 times in a row, it's not going to stay like this for the rest of the game. So I think that was part of the game plan. And like when we talk about playing into their strengths, like that is their strength. They have the best transition player in the league. Like, but Bouanga is more than that and can be more than that. And I think that there are still going to be enough transition moments that you don't need to sit deep. Again, I was surprised that they went to the back 5 with Murillo injured. I guess part of it comes down to Eddie Atuesta was unavailable, precautionary with some sort of knock, they said. But they had Ilie Sanchez on the bench. So, again, I would have liked to seen that. But, again, like Olivier Giroud played better. They integrated him better. And so maybe there is a path forward to finding some sort of compromise in, and again, even calling it a compromise could be a false premise, right? Like, this was just my opinion, right? Like, Steve Trundle, the club, could see it a different way. They probably do. But some sort of compromise in, like, they're still going to be defensively sound, get as many transition moments for Danny Bouanga as possible, but we can still kind of have some of those finishing patterns that ends with Olivier Giroud at the near post on a pass for Bouanga.
And I will say, I think even if they play that way, and this is tough to say coming out of the Leagues Cup final, which was, sort of similar to MLS Cup, which is what they're trying to adjust from and get better from, Bogusz is a better player now, and Bogusz likes to operate in similar spaces. So I think you saw in this game, right, when the game would open up a little and Bouanga wouldn't try and stretch the field, Bogusz would come over from the right side and take up space that was there. And in the first half, the best look at the end of that half is Bogusz comes over to the left, is able to hold off his defender, clean possession, and then he almost lays it off for Bouanga, making the underlapping run into the box. But Bogusz also wants to operate in that space, and so it fits for a lot of this team. It's why I felt very certain Tillman would be in the squad. It's why we think Lewis O'Brien fits the squad as well, because they're both north-south players. But I still think you need what Ilie or Atuesta brings to draw some numbers in at times, to be able to have a little bit of a curveball. So LAFC score, they go up 1-0, you're thinking it's done. And this comes back to the SKC thing. The goal they score is 2 moments of brilliance from 2 good soccer players, right? It's Shaloui's first touch, it's the vision, it's the layoff, and that Tommy finish is something he's capable of. It's something Russell's capable of. It's something Polito's capable of. That's what's hard about digesting this team as individual pieces, and then you put it together and you get a team that's already eliminated from the playoffs and loses in this final, and SKC are able to push it to extra time, and you start to get into the benches, you start to get into depth, and there's just a lot more there for LAFC right now. You have to shout out Kei Kamara at 40 years old, still getting it done, still being a factor. And it feels more cohesive when he's on the field right now because he's been around them for a year or so and feels like very comfortable in the movements that he's supposed to make around those attacking 3.
Yeah, man, like, dude, Kei Kamara's awesome. It gives me so much joy watching him succeed, continue to succeed. The way he plays the game, everything he's about, it was beautiful. The moments after the game when he was with his children who live in Kansas City, flew in because like that he spent a lot of time there. Like that's where their permanent home is. Flew in the morning of to watch this game, to be there. I thought it was adorable. Kai kind of made a point, and he did the Apple TV post game hit, and he was with his kids. He was at the podium after the game doing like normal media scrums. His kids are up there. It was really beautiful, and he had a really great quote coming from this. He was talking about Don Garber and the future of the Open Cup. He goes, "Make sure that he doesn't take MLS away from this. This is American soccer." Kei Kamara is American soccer. So the weight that's coming from him, I love it, and I'm glad that he took this spotlight to say that. He is somebody who emigrated to the United States from Sierra Leone at 16, settled in the greater LA region. Another one of the quotes he said last night was like, "Yeah, like this is home, right?" Like Kei Kamara has been a nomadic dude in his professional career. The most time he spent somewhere was Kansas City in a couple stints or whatever. But he's bounced around so much. He's played for more teams than anybody in MLS history. A couple of those teams, they were different stints too. So he's used to moving every single year essentially, and he feels like he has a home in Los Angeles, not just at LAFC, but like just kind of that's where he broke in, and like all of the lower level, like the college soccer, and then playing in like the reserve league and whatever, like all the ways that he's broken into this, like he is American soccer, and his words mean more on this specific topic.
Yeah, on the in that post game quote, which, as you said, was really good. He talked about the journey that that they ask you to take to get to the top, and sort of saying you have to leave the Open Cup open as an opportunity for people to go through that journey. He talked about him and Chris Wondolowski, who he has now over the last few years brought up a lot because they were on this similar path, and they're going to finish as the top two goal scorers in MLS history of or D2 college soccer, playing in at the time the PDL just for an opportunity to get a chance, and then reserve league, as you said, super draft, reserve league, battling in through rosters, building up your career to get to those high points and those big moments. And not everyone gets there, but everyone gets an opportunity if you leave the system open. And that's what he was talking about. And it was really interesting that he chose his career path as a way to answer the question of like, what's the value of the Open Cup and what should the future of the Open Cup be? We talked about it a ton on Tuesday. So if you missed that show and you're listening now, you can go back and listen to that. We did 15 minutes about the future of the Open Cup and what we want to see and what we're hoping to see. But it is telling that I think the thing I have seen the most around the internet, and the internet's not always real life, coming out of the game is that Kei Kamara quote, even on the night of the game. Like that's where I think a lot of people's minds are at, even when the games are going on, which is part of the problem of like, there's not enough attention all the time on the games and all of that. But I think it's telling of like what's going on in the soccer atmosphere and all of that. And I thought Kai spoke really well on it and played really well. And you talked about the celebrating against SKC and all of that. He had the hard hands. I think he was pretty simple about it and was pretty clean about it in the end. But him and LAFC were able to get it done. And I think once you got through this game and you had SKC 2-hour weather delay on Saturday, eliminated from the playoffs, traveling to LA, it felt like as the game went on, LAFC should be able to take advantage, and they did so, I think, as the game opened up late on. They're younger. I think they're more technical, man for man, as well as they have more experience now winning in these moments. Like, you trust Johnny Russell, you trust an Alan Pulido. Mm-hmm. They've never as a group won anything. They never played in a final before. And so I think you saw LAFC's quality there. Shout out to, I believe it was 600 supporters, club staff, families from the Sporting KC side that made the trip out for the game. And you could feel it. Like you could feel the atmosphere. You could feel both sides of it. It felt like a final and felt like a big game.
Yeah, I love that. It was really cool. Atmosphere was great. Again, obviously the LAFC fans first and foremost because there's just more of them there. But it was really, really cool to see the traveling contingent for SKC. I'd love to see that.
I'm going to say, sort of, I tossed it to you, but I didn't answer. I don't think it matters what happens in the playoffs. If LAFC wins the U.S. Open Cup and they go into the Leagues Cup final, like, this is a good season. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
I understand. The only thing that gives me pause is Giroud's age and like the amount you spent to bring him in, and we don't know if Bogusz and Kike Oliveira, like this might be a one chance for this specific group, and they should all recognize that internally. But if this year ends without them winning a playoff series, I don't think you can walk away from this and say 2 finals, 1 championship, the first time your club's ever won it. You've gotten back into CONCACAF competition. Like, I don't think this is what clubs should do. And I don't think it's fair to change the rubric unless they specifically say the only reason we played this year was to win MLS Cup, and that's their opinion. I would be surprised if that's what they said.
Yeah, no, again, they're equal opportunists with trophies. Like, there is obviously a little hierarchy with MLS Cup being the most important for the domestic campaign and everything, but the US Open Cup, it's still a trophy, it's still very important. And again, make it a success. One more point to add. Carlos Vela wins another final. There's that aspect of this. So he at least put a jersey on for the post-game celebration. I didn't know if it was going to be another a shacket and then like a very fashion-forward, very handsome, very good. But at least he had his jersey on. It was nice.
He also ate a whole pizza during the game. He just won a trophy on the back end of it, and you have to come on Soccerwise the next day and talk about it. Hat tip to Tim Melia. Phenomenal in the first half. Really good across the game. He is part of that core. He was one of only 2 players, I think, in this team who had played in the previous Open Cup final for Sporting Kansas City. So for LAFC, that's our thoughts on where they stand. They've got a huge game this weekend. They play FC Cincinnati. They are still fighting for home field advantage. I think you can see over the course of these 2 finals what home field advantage means for LAFC. So there is a ton of value there in remaining top 4 at a minimum. And if they can sneak to top 2, they could get at least the 2 rounds at home in their own confines, which is really big for them. And if the Galaxy finish first, yeah, you don't want to travel away, but it would mean you don't really have to travel over the course of the final 2 rounds of the MLS Cup playoffs. On the flip side, for Sporting Kansas City, eliminated from the playoffs. They lose this game. Peter Vermes had comments after the game about the Mateusz Bogusz offsides. It seems to be offside if you the account that does the lines on the field, which I cannot remember for the life of me. No, I have it right here. Offside modeling says Bogusz appears to be about a foot offside. You really can't tell from the angles and from the cameras, which is unfortunate. Vermes felt this call has gone against them so many times in the past. I think that's probably a little bit of the emotion of the moment coming in, but that's fine. But for Sporting Kansas City now, the season's over. Like they can't make the postseason. They had this one opportunity to change everything, change that conversation. They don't. And now, Tom, they go into an offseason in which a lot of the big pieces on this team are still under contract, including Alan Pulido, who's on $3.6 million through 2026.
It's tough. They can finesse some flexibility. There's, they have musical chairs a little bit with their designated player situation where they'll kind of maneuver different guys in depending on how advantageous it is for the salary cap and allocation money. They could add another 2 DBs if they want to. Why would you have any expectation that that's what they're going to do?
Yeah.
You shouldn't, right? Like, this is a team that I don't think have transitioned to MLS 4.0 or whatever you'd want to call it right now. So I'm glass half empty with this group moving forward, just because a lot of these problems have been the same problems for the last 3 or 4 years. Center back, defensive midfield, old, not being able to bring in the next wave behind Johnny Russell in particular. Daniel Shalvey had one really, really good season. He has not hit that same level, but he's a good starter. Alan Pulido had one really, really good season. I think most of us could have guessed that was going to be unsustainable, and it might not be the best long-term investment, but they gave him the contract anyway. Eric Tommy, I think, has been a good signing, but he's 30. Is it good signing, or can he be very good, right? Like, I think those are the margins here. I just don't trust this team to push the top-end talent up, which would have to come with more money. And I don't trust them. Like, they've had a hole at defensive mid since they decided 3 years ago Ilie Sanchez was cooked. And he's just won, 15 trophies with LAFC during that time, including last night. And And central defense, it's the same thing year after year. Andre Fontas, I voted him Defender of the Year one year. I forget what year it was now. It's all blending together. But like other than that, it's been fine. It's been somewhere between and fine. And like the defense is still an issue, and defensive midfield is still a glaring issue. Bringing more academy players through Jake Davis has been awesome. You can't have both. We're not going to spend a lot of money. We're not going to really jump into like modern MLS, and also have an academy that's not producing multiple of those players every year. Like the Philadelphia Union spend money really smart, but they do really, really well at their academy as well. So that's how they've sustained their success. I'm really worried about Kansas City, and there's a path forward, but I feel like we could have said that any of the last 3 or 4 years. And none of the issues fixed.
It is unclear from the outside what this club wants to be and how they want to build it. And what the reality was, as you keep saying, you know, they haven't stepped into the modern MLS, was like they pushed the ability to compete with the group they had against the LAFCs and Atlantas of the world as they came in the league, because their core and their baseline was so high, because they had drafted so well and they had developed so well. And the fact was that Tim Melia and Matt Beasler and Roger Espinoza and Graham and all of those guys meant that whether they hit on all their DPs, which they really have not, going all the way back to the origination of the rule in Major League Soccer or not, they were going to step on the field and have probably the advantage at 6 or 7 positions head to head against their opponents. That's no longer the case. And so they don't have that baseline to build off of. And like I would say, Ilie probably is cooked if he stayed at SKC, because he couldn't cover the ground, and they don't have the center backs to help him, and they don't have the system built around him. And I think that's the case with a lot of these guys. Like one of the guys they can get off of is Eric Tommy, who's on an option year next year. If I was a different MLS team that needed a little attacking creativity, I'd go get Eric Tommy. But I don't know that SKC should re-sign him, because I don't know that he makes them better, and he's the problem of what they need. So I think there's a lot of pieces in there which are talented. We don't understand exactly what they are choosing as their path forward and what they want to be. I'll put my hand up and say I said they should re-sign Alan Pulido, because I think the talent he has is better than anyone else they're going to go out and sign because of the money they've chosen to spend. And like that wasn't like, oh, we'll sign Alan Pulido, and when he's done, you know, we'll sign Almiron, and then we'll sign PT, and then we'll sign Barco, and then we'll sign Thiago. That wasn't what they were doing, right? Pulido was the big one. It hasn't worked out, but I'd still rather have his talent on this team than not. And there's a lot of question marks. Jake Davis looked good in this game. He's looked great at right back. I think he's a really good option at both. I'm not sure where he's better, and that will be interesting to watch as someone who likes soccer and likes the U.S. national team potentially, and to see his development. But it's not enough for this club to be built around. And I don't know that there's a cornerstone on this roster right now that you could say, okay, over the next 5 years, like this is a permanent piece. Because if Melia is one of the best, like he's not going to be around for that long. And Afrifa, you don't know enough about. And Shallowy, I don't know if he is that guy and has played to that level. That's, I think, the scary part. That's the worrying part if you're SKC. All right?
Sorry. Shallowy and Tommy, I think, are complementary pieces. I think it's a no-brainer. You bring back Eric Tommy on the number 1.1 million or whatever it is. And just the last point to re-highlight their lack of spend. Like, Robert Veloter is their 4th highest ever transfer fee paid. What would he be for Atlanta United? Like 27th?
Yeah.
You know, it's just like they don't take enough swings and they don't spend enough when they do. So you can spend less. Like Seattle Sounders, Raul Ruiz-Diaz and Nico Ladero. You get it right. You don't need to spend $5 million in transfer fees every year. You just keep re-signing the great players, and they've done neither.
So SKC's season is over. Vancouver Whitecaps, three-peat in the Canadian Championship. My power went out last night as these games are all sort of going through it. So I watched the first half of the Canadian Championship on my phone. I watched the second half of the Campeones Cup and the shootout on my phone as well. So on my phone, it looked fun, and it was fantastic. My hand cramped out at some point just trying to hold my phone up and stay locked in. But Vancouver hosting TFC, it was the second time in 3 years. It was the second time that it went to a shootout directly after the end of regular time. There was no extra time in this game, and Vancouver comes out on top. Some really fun moments in this game because for Vancouver. So I finally got the rule. it is 3 Canadians in your starting lineup. That is the rule. It's not on the field.
I thought it was more.
I thought it was more too back in the, because it's like one of those things that always comes up. We're like, oh, how are we going to cover it? Which, by the way, is why Isaac Boehmer started this game, because Vancouver only had Adekugbe and Ali Ahmed in the starting lineup. So, and Vanni Sartini said pregame, oh, he's not playing because he's Canadian. He's playing because he's earned it, because he has played throughout the Canadian Championship. I don't even think Vanni Sartini believed that at the level he does now. Isaac Boehmer saves a Bernadeschi penalty kick in the first half to keep it at 0-0. He then saved one of the shootout penalty kicks. One as well was put over the crossbar. Vancouver wins it. He's man of the match. He's starting fights with Jonathan Osorio. He might be in my Vibes 11 as of right now.
He's the head coach of Vibes. Like, I think we didn't even talk about that. We both know that that's true. It's just things that we know. He was awesome. So partly the game wasn't particularly super fun. It wasn't a great performance. It wasn't super entertaining. So let's start with the off the field, the end of the game stuff. Vanni Sartini after the game, I love this quote. It's a fantastic feeling. I'm really proud of the guys. I told them after the game, this is the victory of love. This is the victory of love of the guys for each other, of the togetherness of this group. Everyone was really pulling for each other, because even in a day where Toronto FC played better than us, we fought, and I'm really happy for them. So one, I love that he's able to say, like, yeah, look, Toronto are better, right? Like, yeah, he's just honest.
I'm not going to fake
earned that.
it.
Yeah, and like, I love how authentic he is. That's the only way he knows how to be. He also did an interview with One Soccer, the Canadian broadcaster, after the game. And he said a lot of that stuff too, which again, I want to say again, I think that's all beautiful, and that's stuff that matters. And it's difficult for us fans, media, pundits, whatever, to really understand that from the outside, and like the role it plays. I don't know, just let me go. And so he was talking about that, and then they were like, "Hey, Vanni, like, are you gonna take your shirt off and celebrate? I think the fans want you to do that again." And he goes, "Oh no, 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 I'm not gonna do." He's talking, and he goes, "How about this? I'll take my shoes off. New tradition. I'll take my shoes off." So now he's walking around in his socks, and it was good laugh. The interview ends. I don't know. 10 seconds later, there was 100 pictures of him on social media without a shirt on. So that was hilarious. Like, I love this guy, dude. Are you kidding me?
He during the shootout, he just went and sat down. Like he stood for the first round, and they kind of went into both huddles. And I think for Toronto, I think the players were really leading the huddle. Like Herdman had them in there, and I think it was Oso and Bernadeschi who were talking. Like, those are leaders. Sartini's in the middle of it, and he's just, you could see him. He's like goes on a little rant, and then he just stops, and then he like kisses someone's head, and then he starts again. And then he like stops after a little bit, and then he starts slamming Boehmer's chest, and then he starts again. And he's just kind of like wandering around, just like hanging out before the shootout. Then after I think the first round of shots, he's just like, screw this. And he goes and sits down on the bench, but he's sitting behind his staff, so you can't see. And he's just kind of waiting to hear the reactions from the crowd. He's a lot of fun. It is obviously, as we said, a big deal for this team. They qualify for CONCACAF. They are so far behind Toronto and Montreal in the history of this competition. Like Vancouver, we did during COVID, we did the depths of it. We did sort of the Mount Rushmores of all the clubs, and we did Vancouver. And like, it was like Russell Tybert. And like, that was kind of it. Like, there was just no history for this club. So you can't understate winning this. Toronto has won this 10 times. And this is just the 4th one ever for Vancouver. They're still behind Montreal. Like, we can't minimize what this means for this club. And when I talked about the baseline with KC, like, they have that baseline, right? They play poorly. They don't play terrible. They now, over the last 3 years, will lose a game in one leg in a Canadian championship and bounce back and get the win. Like, there's consistency to this where Toronto and Montreal don't make the final every year over the course of these 4 years because they don't have that. But 0 big chances in a final at home. That's the question marks around Vancouver. The high-end talent, the production in the big moments. This felt like the story right now, which is similar to sort of what I talked about with LAFC, but in a different way. Hang around and see if someone else makes a mistake, but not the initiator and not the creator. And I thought in the first half, Vancouver found some really dangerous openings. Brian White, 1v1 with Long at one point, Gauld had a really good moment where he snuck behind the back line and tried to square one to White as well, that Petretta read, gets over, clears it away. Like, you saw those moments. They didn't build on it, though. And Ali Ahmed taken off at halftime. I assume that's an injury. I haven't seen, but I don't know why you would take him off. He's one of the best players in this team. And I thought Vancouver actually lost control as the game went along, and they were lucky to get to the shootout. And then once they got there, they showed their pedigree of like being in that moment before and being pretty confident.
Yeah, and I think that all aligns with, again, what Fanny said, like, Toronto were better. Like, Bernadeschi didn't score a penalty. They had their chances. Isaac Ballmer was awesome. Sorry to keep on bringing up these quotes from Fanny, but he was talking up Ballmer, how great he did. He goes, I hope my friend Jesse was watching, talking about Jesse Martz, the Canadian national team. And then in there, he just weaved in as he's euphoric, smiling, laughing. He's talking about how great the players are, all of this. He's deflated. He goes, yeah, pretty good decision by me to start him, right? Like, just like completely messing around. But I was just like, dude, this guy's the man. So yeah, what an awesome moment for Isaac Ballmer. What a great moment for the Vancouver Whitecaps. That's 3 in a row. This is, again, adding to the trophy case. The Canadian Championship is a little bit different just because there's 3 MLS teams playing numbers, right? Like Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver, every single season should go into this competition assuming, expecting, striving to win it. And Vancouver have the last 3 years. And Vancouver are easily the best Canadian MLS team over this time. And this is a reflection of that. And we'll see if they can take the next step in the playoffs this year.
On the conversation of the next step and where this club's going, it's telling that this was the smallest crowd of the 3 finals. I think it peaked last year.
I was very surprised.
Yeah, 2 years ago against Toronto, I think they set the record for a Whitecaps crowd. Not a soccer crowd because BC Place has hosted big games. And then last year, it was fantastic for Montreal. Part of it was scheduling. So last year, the final was in June, and it was like a 9-week stretch, I think, where the tournament started. You know, there's energy, there's momentum, the final happens, boom. But I also think it's like, all right, we've seen you do this. And I think the fan base and the market wants to be excited by the next thing. Like, can you push things farther, right? For Toronto, they rebuilt things under Tim Bezbatchenko. They made the playoffs, great, but it had to build. If in 2017 they didn't make MLS Cup and they didn't win it, I think you would have started to see the crowds dissipate, and we've seen it now in, the 2020s. And so I think that's where, for Vancouver, that's the danger here, is like you've built a really good team. And I said it on the last show, like this team could be around for a while at this level. But if you don't take the next step, you start to feel, I think, atrophy from the fans. And that's a little bit of what you saw on this Wednesday night. It should be the biggest moment of the season. And it was, but felt different than it did over the last 2 years for this Whitecaps team. From Toronto's point of view, I don't know that it's a huge surprise, right? Like this game played out like a lot of their games have played out. As we said, they were good. They were dangerous. Shout out to Richie Larea. He is a savant at drawing penalty kicks. He literally dribbles by, is it Adekube that he draws it on? I don't remember who he drew the foul on. He dribbles by the player. Maybe it's Aborda. He dribbles by the player and then just kind of waits to be like, now you're going to foul me. So you can come foul me now. I'm ready.
It's uncanny.
Yeah.
It's uncanny. There's nobody else like it.
It is.
He's been doing this for years.
And he's doing it against his former team. So he's been in training with all these guys or against his national team teammates. Like everyone knows who he is on the field in this game. And he still does it to them. And he still is able to draw the penalty. They're not able to score it. And then you get into the shootout. And Vancouver are able to win it in that moment. For Toronto, they've still got a shot at the playoffs. As we talked about on Tuesday, they sit in currently tied for the last spot in the postseason and on tiebreaker right now, but they've played one more game than everyone else. So Toronto's going to have to play well to make the playoffs.
It's going to be a brutal end to this season in terms of, so they play Chicago this weekend. Kind of a must win, honestly. It's because they play Red Bulls and Miami as the last 2 games. Like particularly the Miami one's going to be difficult. But they're the unlucky team that isn't playing Decision Day.
Right.
And this year, the way that Decision Day falls is it's international break before Decision Day. Their last game is October 5th. They have 2 weeks of training of, did we do enough? Did we not do enough? What's going on? Like, that sucks. And it's unfortunate, too, that, again, they had the midweek final, lose a final. You got, travel. They went from Colorado to Vancouver. Now they come back to. Now they're going to Chicago. I don't know. I'm sure they'll stop home or whatever. I don't know their itinerary. But that's a lot of travel. That's a lot of congestion. That's a heartbreak. You got to pick yourself back up. And oh my God, like we need to pick up points here to ensure that we're going to stay over the playoff line because there's a bunch of teams behind us that are. I wouldn't say sprinting or chasing us down. I'd say a lot of teams are falling over each other for this ninth place in the Eastern Conference. And whoever does, they lose to Philly in round one of the play-in game. But if Toronto make the playoffs, if they finish ninth, again, not a high bar to clear and not normally something to write home about what a great season. This is absolutely a successful season for this team. We could see on the outside, very easy to see bad contracts and what they had to do in the offseason to try to move on from a lot of players. I can tell you from having a better look, I was privy to a better look on the inside and speaking to people who know more than me, this situation was even worse than we could have deduced from the outside. Like, all of the contract, like, they had multiple, they knew they were going to buy somebody out. And it was like, all right, which one of these 5 players are we going to buy out? Is there any chance that any of these other players can exit the club without there being a buyout? That's awful. Right? Yeah. Like, the previous regime, as is normal in MLS, doesn't mean that it's good. When you're fearing for your job, you pull every single dollar forward from the future that you can pull forward. Because if you don't do it, you're getting fired. And then if it happens, it doesn't work out, you get fired. Not your problem. Who cares? Yeah. Right? Like, so this has been a year about transition. This has been enough positive steps to determine for me that this is a positive season. Again, I'm grading on a curve. It is a very low bar to clear. But to a man and to a woman of people who were trying to prognosticate what the season was going to be, I don't know, 98% of people had Toronto either dead last or second to last in the East. So playing meaningful games at this time of the season, getting to a Canadian Championship final, I think it's a success. Like, especially if they hang on in that playoff spot.
Yeah, we talked about it a little bit when we did the underrated team, but they basically didn't spend any money on the roster this last offseason to change things because all of the major money has been spent. Kevin Long's on $250,000. He was the big addition to your back line. Flores, who we talked at, that's why we talked about it. He's been really good.
Staff, good.
Again, yeah, none of those were big signings. But the problem is you still don't really get a lot of that off the books, right? Insigne and Bernadeschi are there. Richie Larea's on a big contract. Petretta's on a big contract. They're all still there. The main one you get off of is Prince Owusu, which helps. If you can spend $800,000 on a striker who you'd actually start, that's ideal over not. But, like, this is not done for Toronto. They still have to rebuild because of the points you made of, like, the way they sort of pushed themselves over the last few years to try and be competitive. The final championship of the night, the historic, the tradition-laden Campeones Cup, Columbus against Club America. This is the big one, Tom. This is what we all love this sport for. And we got what we wanted in the end.
Get juiced. Jokes aside, I was concerned that this was not going to feel like a final and it was going to feel like a glorified friendly. It felt like a final, and it was a lot of fun, honestly. Club America have been the best team them and Columbus have been the 2 best teams on the continent, and things change very quickly in Liga MX. So they don't have Julian Quinones, but, like, this is still a really, really great team. So these are 2 teams that still have the height of the power. Cucho Hernandez is still here. Like, that's not always a guarantee for the team that wins MLS Cup as either, depending on where you are on your roster build and where your best players are in terms of their career. So these 2 teams generally were preserved from how great that they were in past to qualify for this game. And they both started what, from the outside for Club America, I'm not an expert, that looked as, first choice as it gets. Definitely was for the Columbus Crew. And it was just a really good game and a really impressive test. Like, I want to watch the Columbus Crew against Club America, against Tigres, against Monterrey, against all these teams as much as possible. And again, I was fearful that last night was going to be a disappointment, and it wasn't.
Yeah, it was a fun soccer game. Like, these 2 teams went for it. They played the way they play, which is fun to watch. Club America brought 3 internationals off the bench in the 60th minute as their subs. Like, this is a massive team with a huge roster and a ton of talent. Not that top end talent like Quinones. Like, no one on the team's as good, but you still have starters for Chile and Paraguay, and you have Brian Rodriguez, who's playing with Uruguay still, and Henry Martin, and like all these pieces that are really impressive to watch. And I thought it was actually interesting to watch Columbus sit in and defend a little bit in this game because they were better at it than I expected, and they looked okay in stretches where Club America started to knock it around, and that's probably good to know if that's something Columbus has to fall into at times in the postseason, not because they choose to, but just because that's the way the game goes sometimes. So it was an entertaining game. It goes to shootouts, and like, I don't know, we're in danger of getting us to a spot where I don't care about shootouts anymore. Like, you give me a summer of tournaments there, every game ends in a shootout, and then you throw this thing in on top, and it's like, do you feel the pressure? And it's like, yeah, I mean, you could see Schulte at the end. He'd rather have won that than not. He was pissed he didn't make that final save. That doesn't mean anything. And I think with Leagues Cup, it's kind of ridiculous that this is still a competition because you built a whole tournament for this whole point. Like, this should have been the precedent to it. I don't know what term I'm trying to use there. And so now that you've set this up, you really don't need this. And like, it was a fun game from good teams, but I'd like to see them fresh for big games. So rather than waste them here, I'd like to see Columbus and America be able to rest their players on a normal week, to see them be good on the weekends and see them be ready for playoffs and all those other things going forward. So Club America won. Liga MX is a better league. Club America is the best team in the region. They're arguably the best team in the world because of what happened last night. There was a bunch of controversy off the missed PK from Odmundson. The question is, if it's not saved, does the goalkeeper affect the player? I don't know. The goalkeeper always affects the player because you're trying to shoot away from the goalkeeper. That's a dumb rule. It should be if you hit the post. It doesn't matter what the goalkeeper does. That's my take. And that's pretty much as much juice as we have for all of that. Let's dig into the weekend. Let's talk MLS general. Before we get there, let's do our Vibes 11. I believe it was Webhead who put this in the chat. I don't even have a lower third because I wasn't even ready for it. Let's talk.
It's all vibes, baby.
Let's just talk vibes. We worked on it together, and somehow we both wrote down completely different teams. So you can present yours first. I can present mine, and we can face off in battle.
There's only one team here, and it's mine. That's all I'm going to say. Goalkeeper, Sean Zawadzki, because I think that's a good vibe given his performance coming off the bench for Columbus, the midfielder. Backline, Richie Larea, Walker Zimmerman, Rodrigo Schlegel, John Tolkien. Midfield, Felipe Martins, Coco Carrasquilla, Evander, and a front line of Luca Oriano, Christian Benteke, Diego Luna. Couple quick notes. Benteke's here on Vibes because he's the greatest aerial player in this league. And he is, I think, better at that skill than anybody in this league is at anything that they're the best at. Ooh. It is clearly the biggest drop-off from first to second. And I love it. I'm proper football, man. I'm playing in my ultimate team. I've got the old school Peter Crouch, 6'7", and Darwin Nunez, and just 4-4-2. Give me some Stoke City kits. Give me long throws, and just put in the box, mate. That's what we're talking about.
In the mixer.
The mixer.
You would be very comfortable in Wembley sitting next to me watching the League 2 playoff game where every fan just yells, do him, do him, do him. And it's just that for 90 minutes. And you're like, oh, yeah, this is the home of the sport. Ours are pretty similar across the back because that's when we were still on the same page. I was the one who said Zawadzki in goal. But you know what? No.
Congratulations.
No. Isaac Boehmer is my goalkeeper. He's obviously my goalkeeper. So I don't need Zawadzki anymore. I've got Isaac Boehmer in goal. We had the same back four because Richie's obvious, again, the PK savant. And then also always being like, but I'm innocent. And then Schlegel's...
And the guy who stirs the pot all the time and then does the I'm innocent thing while always being the one who's starting altercations.
Yeah, exactly. I had Tolkien, Walker, and Schlegel as my backup goalkeeper as well. By midfield, though, I went with Keaton Parks. Keaton Parks will take someone on anywhere on the field. He is a great vibe. I have Kubo, who has been all vibes all season for the last 2 years.
Love him.
And can play 87 positions, so I need him in my team. And then I've got Evander in there because he's been, I talked about, like, there's these moments where he's like, oh, why did you make me score against you? I hate that you did that to me. Then my front three, I'm going strikerless, is Diego Luna, Coco, and Oriano. I don't know that I have a center forward. I mean, Patrick Ajagad obviously has a threat to be in every team. Every team I put together. But
That dude's
I don't know.
vibes, though, man.
Yeah, he
I think
is.
he's vibes.
I think he is too. But I don't want to disrespect him by putting he's in a best 11, not a vibes.
Yo, you want to
11.
disrespect Evander?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm okay with it for now. He's in 8th place. His team, he'll take what he can get at this point. That's our vibes 11.
Juiced. I needed that.
If you have differing, let us know. We are open to all
Please let us
suggestions as well. Let's dig into the weekend. A lot of the teams that played on Wednesday have big games this week. So I already mentioned LAFC face off against FC Cincinnati in Cincinnati. I have zero idea who will be there for LAFC. Like, if you remember back to Columbus playing at Philly midweek after that, it was a completely rotated team. They still won. LAFC, that week, had to go and play in the Open Cup semifinal. So they didn't get the chance to sort of take a game off. If it was me, I would do it. I'd be like, hey, Nathan Ordaz, you've got 180 minutes in you for this game. You are playing 2 positions, and we're doing the rest of it without you. Give my guy Luca Bombino a chance. Best left back in the pipeline. Make it happen. But, this should be must win for Cincinnati. On paper, though, it is an exciting matchup and the best of the weekend.
Yeah. On paper is a very good qualifier. Is Carlos Vela 90 minutes fit yet? Maybe he can give the shift. Yeah, it's important for Cincy in terms of playoff seeding. They're level on points with Columbus, but Columbus have a game in hand. Obviously, Columbus had their own midweek game, and they're getting the benefit of LAFC having played a final midweek. So, Cincy, this is a good spot for them to pick up points. Anecdotally, do you remember after Cincy walloped Miami? What was it, 6-1, 5-1, whatever it was? Incredible game. That's when it looked like we had a 6-team race for the Shield. Mm-hmm. Turns out it was just one. And we were looking all these games we're forecasting for it by the end of the season. Look at all this. Columbus plays Cincy, and Miami plays Columbus, and LAFC plays them, and the Galaxy play them. One, there hasn't been Shield 6 for any of them. Messi wasn't back for Cincy. Cincy had their own injuries. Columbus plays every day and a half now. LAFC is coming off this. All these games that I was so excited for. And just hoping we're going to get full strength. We're going to get rested teams or whatever. None of that has happened in any of the 7 games. And I'm really disappointed about it.
Yeah. And you're going to lose another one here with this game probably. Although it could be really fun for all those stakes as well, or because of all those cases as well of just pure chaos. The other big one this weekend, both for standings, for playoffs, and for rivalry, is the Hudson River Derby happening. So Red Bulls against NYCFC. These are 2 teams we've talked about a lot over the last few weeks of the downturn and the struggles. This is a rallying point moment for you. Also, this could be a first round playoff matchup for you. Yep. If you end up being the 4-5, which is very likely, it could maybe be a 3-6, probably not. With the way these 2 teams,
it cannot be. It's not mathematically proven, but I'll save the suspense. The Red Bulls are not making up a 12-point gap on Columbus or Cincy,
and NYC's probably cannot make a 15-point gap up.
It is. Never mind. It is mathematically impossible because of the tiebreaker.
So it could be the 4-5.
Glad we sorted that. Just want to say, glad we stopped everything. You're welcome for doing that.
But it would be a fascinating first round playoff series, and this could be the decider of who's the home team in that, and who has the 2 games at home versus the 1 game, which would be pretty big. And this is, I think, a chance for NYCFC to stop the slide that they've been through. You come off.
Stop the steal.
Yeah, I didn't say that. You did. You come off the. I hate you so much right now. You come off the James Sands equalizer, in front of a huge crowd at home against NYCFC or against Miami, all that stuff in the last game. Can you grow on it? Can you ride on that? And here's an opportunity where Red Bulls are going to let you have the ball. They're going to let you dictate the game. This is a matchup you have struggled with a lot in the past. Can you take advantage of it this time? And I think this is a huge chance for NYCFC. And for Red Bulls, it's a big game because they're rivals and there's all of that going to it. But I think this should be one for NYCFC to try and take advantage of.
I would go the other. Well, I think that rings true for both teams, that this is the chance to get right. What you say is, these teams, neither of them have won since early July in MLS. it is what it is, right? Like, so the rallying cry around this is, it's a derby. Who cares? Throw everything out, and then if you win, you have a good performance in the locker room when you're all celebrating. You kind of come together. It's like, who cares about what's happened in the last 3 months? Who cares? Nothing matters. This is the start of a new chapter of the season, and we're building towards the playoffs. So I think this is a good time of the season for it to happen for both these teams, because if it was Red Bulls against Montreal or NYCFC against Nashville, like, a 2-0 good performance, good win doesn't do as much to jolt your season as playing your rival and potentially winning that game. On the Red Bull side of things, Emil Forsberg, as of a week ago, I think Sandro Schwartz said that he was likely to be back for this game.
What? I didn't even know we were allowed to say his name anymore. Now you're going to start throwing him on the field?
Yeah, allegedly. I haven't seen any updates today. I believe he did his pregame press conference today, if we're both going to be searching that. But yeah, if he'll be ready, Sandro Schwartz on Emil Forsberg. Said they'll decide if he starts or comes off the bench in the next 36 hours. That sounds to me like he's coming off the bench. But
For
I'm just
sure.
guess. But regardless, this team is bleak without this attack. Is bleak without Forsberg. They're a different team with the man. Like, if he's gets into good form, again, starting with NYCFC, going down the stretch, like, that could be the best team in the next group. Like, again, I still, even with Forsberg, I don't think that they're good enough to challenge the top three. But, like, that is a different, I guess, side of, again, the slop that has been, 4 through, honestly, 15 in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, NYCFC already beat Red Bulls this year. They beat them late on last year as well. So it's been over a year since Red Bulls have beaten NYCFC. And it's a big one for these two teams, as we said, heading into those standings. If Forsberg's back, it changes a lot. He draws attention. He sets players up in different ways. He's such a threat on set pieces that it changes, I think, a little bit how you defend, where you're willing to give up those chances, and then the challenges you're willing to make around the box. So it's a big difference for this team. Out west, some really good matchups. Kansas City have to go to St. Louis. That is brutal. You get eliminated from the playoffs during a 2.5-hour weather delay on Saturday. You fly to LA, you lose a cup final in extra time, and now you have to go play your rivals who will be eliminated but aren't yet, and you probably have nothing left. Like, I think this is a recipe for disaster for Sporting Kansas City and for St. Louis. They've been playing some better soccer. There's an opportunity to get a good win against your rival and sort of make it a cleaner finish to the end of the season. And then all the Cascadia teams in some good matchups. So Vancouver facing off against Portland and Seattle facing off against Houston on this weekend. I assume Vanni Sartini shows up with Prosecco on the sideline and is just drinking straight from the bottle and celebrating into this game. I don't know the group Vancouver brings out there, but reminder, Takaoka didn't start because they needed the Canadian, and Boehmer was amazing. Stuart Armstrong hasn't started a game yet. Ahmed got subbed out at halftime. So there are pieces there for Vancouver to put out on the field and I think put together a fairly competitive team. But this one's going to be vibes. Vancouver gave up 4 goals last week against the Galaxy. Portland, we've talked about 7 million times. I would expect this to be a 3-3 game at worst.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm worried to see what it's going to look like after winning the Canadian Championship. Again, I know that they're fighting for seeding, but Vancouver, again, whether they're 5th, 6th, or 7th, I don't think it makes a huge difference. I think that there are a lot of really good teams in the Western Conference. Look, Portland could overtake Vancouver, and they could slip into the play-in round, which I think would be pretty disastrous.
Yeah.
But they have a game in hand. There's still time here. Again, the most important result was Wednesday night. So I'm worried about a little bit of a letdown, and maybe an intensity, but we'll see. I do hope that we see more minutes from Stuart Armstrong, because that's the most fascinating thing about this team going into the playoffs for me. How does he look? How does he elevate this team? And most specifically, how does he change the role, the focus, the ability to contribute goals for Ryan Gauld? If Stuart Armstrong is somebody who is elite at ball progression, then Ryan Gauld doesn't have to do a lot of middle third work, and he can potentially be freed up to do more in the attack. So I'm looking forward to seeing what that looks like over the course of the end of the season. But I said that a month ago, and I know that they're being careful about bringing him in. So that's the most interesting thing about this club going into the end of the season. Yeah.
The other name I'd throw in there is Sam Adekugbe. He was hurt for a while. He came back. He has not played a full 90 since he's been in and out. He plays a lot of spots for them. He was a big time signing. He started at right wing back this game, but then his best moment was playing a cross in from the left while rotating across the field. And then when Ahmed comes off,
Vanny ball, baby.
Yeah, he ends up at left wing back with Raposo coming back on. He's another big part of this team. I think the best pure soccer game we're going to see this weekend is Seattle-Houston, right? All of these games have this team played midweek, this team played midweek. Seattle-Houston, two teams fighting for the potential of a home game. If not, they're fighting to get that little bit higher in the standings. Also, two teams, I think, that both believe they could make a Western Conference Finals this year. And there are two teams where, for the most part, what we see, they don't lose because of weak link soccer moments, right? They are two fairly composed, well-built rosters in which it's normally the lack of a moment of brilliance that they can both falter in, but it's not very often like, oh, this team just tripped over themselves like you talked about at the bottom of the East, and that's why they lost. And so I think we could see a really good game. Houston been really fun to watch the last 2 or 3 weeks. Yeah. They've been, outside of the chaos of Galaxy and Portland, they might be the best soccer team that's not named Columbus or play for Wilfred Nancy in the league. And like, you should always tune in for them. They should always be on your TV when they're playing.
100%. I couldn't agree more. I would add that Houston has been playing incredible ball for the better part of 2 years. So yeah, they've finally gotten healthy. Ponce needs to score goals, but there's a lot of options there, and they have been fun to watch. Well, with that, we get to the end of our show. So we will be back next week to review all things, Monday recap to sort of reset the standings, everything that happened this weekend. There are a lot of like weird must-win games because you look at teams that are trying to make the playoffs. Montreal playing San Jose, that's a must-win game for CF Montreal. Philly playing Atlanta. Got to get the main screen.
That's a must-win game. Must-win does not mean super entertaining. Low-key, the other two games to point out for people, if you're looking as a neutral for things to watch, Minnesota hosting Colorado. That Minnesota on a good run, but they haven't played the best soccer. Colorado have been phenomenal. And Dallas hosting Orlando. I think we're going to find out if Dallas is for real in a game like this against a better opponent and a team that's also in good form like them. All right. That's all for us. Monday recap, tomorrow mailbag show, and the interview coming out. Next week, we will have all of our coverage as well across Major League Soccer and WSL as we continue on here at Soccerwise. Thank you all for listening. We'll talk to you again very, very soon.